Hello and welcome to Phoenix Cinema Podcast, also known as Japanese Cinema Podcast. And of course I say that because we've watched a lot of Japanese films over the course of this first batch of episodes.
It's been a good year.
A good year. I love it. Keep them coming. How's your Japanese, Ian? Are you picking anything up?
Not at all. Not in the least. Yeah. No matter how many, I've watched a lot of Japanese film, but that means nothing.
Well, I've learnt how to say "Kasuo iie gadata," which means, "Damn, that was a good movie." So, thank you, Google Translate.
Well done.
And I've got to say, I love that the Phoenix is programming so many international films. It's great. And you can probably speak more to this, Zalan, but you seem to be making a concerted effort to screen every movie selected at the Cannes Film Festival last year.
Yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, it's important to have all different voices heard, like different cultures. And then sometimes you have like certain, countries that particularly they hitting, purple patch, because certainly see with Korean films that, like just so many quality content coming out, and Japanese films are really strong as well. So I'm glad that you're actually choosing and watching Japanese films, that often, and that's a good sign.
Oh my God, it's so exciting. We love it. Honestly, we love it. But yeah, sorry, I digress. I'm Chris Austin.
I'm Ian Hawks.
And joining us today is Zalan Pall, the Phoenix manager.
Welcome back, guys. I'm excited to be part of this show.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. And yeah, this is a podcast where we discuss what's showing at the historic Phoenix Cinema. This week, we're going to be discussing Perfect Days, the Japanese movie by the legendary German filmmaker Wim Wenders. And, interesting fact, it's the first Japanese movie to be nominated for Best International Film at the Oscars by a director from a different country. So
that's interesting.
That.
Yeah. I was very curious about, I don't know Wim Wenders' work as well as I should. I am a very big fan of Wings of Desire. I've seen it a couple times, and it's one of my favorite films. But I actually haven't seen any other films by Wim Wenders. But so I was very excited when I saw that there was another film coming out, and then was very surprised that it was a completely Japanese language film that took place in Japan. So,
well, that's so interesting, yeah, because I was going to ask, what is your, and I guess I'll ask, you can answer this now, Zayn, as well, but what is your viewing relationship with this filmmaker? Are you familiar with his past work?
Yeah, I'm a big fan. It's just through Wings of Desire, really, because that was my first introduction, and Paris, Texas. So that's the film, the two films that I probably watch at least once every year. I try to watch those two films, and luckily, there are a lot of cinema releases of that, and that I love those two films. But in general, he's a very, very interesting character, and then his type of the variety of the films he's making, it's quite unique. I mean, if you look at his filmography, you see documentaries, you see like completely like a Pino was like an incredible performance driven film, and then it's incredible. I mean, he's really something that. And that's a unique voice in cinema. And then some of these films that probably most people not seen, like ones like Palermo Shooting, that I managed to catch it in Prince Charles one day, and I was completely mesmerized. So wow. I was excited to hear, as you said, this premise of having a German director, a Japanese film set in Japan with a Japanese cast. That just on paper sounded intriguing, and the end product was also just as satisfying.
Seriously, yeah. And Paris, Texas, was that his like first English language movie, if I'm not mistaken? It's an set in, and I can't remember the character actor who who
Everything's
leads
Stanton.
It's Stanton, because we were talking about him the other day, because
Stanton,
he was
of
in
course.
another movie we watched together. I'm failing to remember now, but
Yeah, what was it? That's right, we did mention
it was
him.
in Last Temptation of Christ. Was he in Last Temptation of
Yeah,
Christ?
was he? I honestly can't
No,
remember now.
I can't remember. Anyways,
Yeah, but
anyways, yeah, we love him.
it's so interesting to hear you both praise Wings of Desire, because so that's the you know what's coming. But that's the only other movie of Wenders that I knew as well. And actually, our other friend Nathaniel, I went to go and see this with him. He came to London. We went to the BFI and we watched Wings of Desire. And yeah, I really, really struggled with it. Actually, it was I had to. Yeah, it was a hard introduction to Wenders for me. And I walked out. I left, but it wasn't, just to clarify, I needed to pee. So that's why I walked out. And when I came back, there were so many people in the screening that I decided not to go back to my seat. But for all intents and purposes, to Nathaniel, I just left the screening.
So just a quick question on that, just because I think that gives you the idea of like your relationship to the film as well. Have you been to Berlin, the city, before?
Never.
So see, that makes a difference, because I've been to Berlin and it's one of my favorite cities. So when you see a film, surrounding, that's because actually the original German title is Angel Above Berlin. So it's the English title is terrific as well. But it's when a city is so prominently a character in a film as well.
Mm-hmm.
If you know that city, that makes a bit of a difference. So I think that was one of the reasons why I was connected with it straight away.
Yeah,
that makes
I watched it.
a lot of sense.
Interestingly, I watched it in school, but it was in a class specifically about German film. And it's a film obviously tied so closely to the city, which it remind like. I was pleased to see that in this film as well, actually, in Perfect Days. I actually saw a lot of Wings of Desire, I think, in this film. The way and I was because I was curious about how the movie was made, I looked up a little background, and apparently, I don't know how this began, but apparently Wenders was invited to Tokyo to observe the Tokyo toilet project. Essentially, Japanese public toilets were redesigned in a bunch of these locations to be these magnificent, beautiful pieces of art, which they are in the film. And I guess he was just so taken by them. They thought I guess his producer, I'm reading here that his producers thought they might make a short film or a series of short films, but then he decided to make a feature. He was so taken by these bathroom facilities. And I do think it's so, I find that so striking and lovely, and I think, at least it reminded me of the scenes in Wings of Desire where just the city of Berlin plays such a key part to the fabric and the texture of the story, and these bathrooms are the main characters to some degree of this movie. Wow. Which you would never expect, but really works for me. It also just makes me. America has terrible public restrooms. It made me feel ashamed the whole movie as I was watching it. Our country has completely failed in this regard.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about. The starting point as a writer for this movie, it begins with those toilets. That's where you start. That's where the seed of the idea begins. One of my
germ. Yeah, it's a little Freudian slip there.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments actually in the movie is when I guess you have this American woman show up while he's cleaning, and she's trying to use, and she's asking, she asks him, how do you do this? And at first, when I saw those toilets too, my head kind of turned, like the dogs, just that curious kind of tilt, what is this? Oh, okay. And then the entire glass, see-through glass, blurs out once you lock the door. And I love how when he describes to her how to use it, the chuckle to herself, just the laughter, just she's giddy about exploring this and discovering this fascinating toilet. It's just one of those little moments that is just beautiful in this movie.
Well, and it speaks to I think it speaks so well to the theme of the film, right? Well, and I think that's probably why this film had to be made in Japanese and co-written by a Japanese writer, is whoever had the idea for this toilet, the Tokyo toilet project, it was based off this idea, right, that you would take the most mundane part of your day that you would never think about, and that should just be kind of forgettable, and then you would make it something special. That you would make a little something that would make you chuckle, or a little something that would just make you find something perfect and beautiful in that moment. Which is, I think, the theme of the whole film, and the film draws a lot from like Ozu's work as well, and this kind of this like stillness in just finding beauty in these very mundane moments and experiences.
Actually named after, like, the Hirayama is named after Ozu's Tokyo Stories. So I like that filmmakers do that. They have this kind of paying homage to it without ripping off a scene, like that those elements. But it's the strikes the right balance as well, because it has this. It's a character study, but also it's like combining kind of a road movie rhythm for this film, and that's with a mixture of this stillness and honest and simple life, and then it just all amounts to this wonderful, a film all together that it just fits together perfectly.
I love you compared it to the pacing of a road movie, because you're totally right. I hadn't even thought about that. This kind of like these little journeys, excursions into little areas. It's like that's very thoughtful. I'm curious, Chris, I really want to know what you thought about it, because as I was watching it, we've watched a lot of movies together. As I was watching it, I was like, Chris might not like this movie. Just because I know that, the longer, slower stuff that is the plot's a little more ephemeral can sometimes kind of be harder for you to sink your teeth into.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier, my first interaction with Wenders and Wings of Desire, it didn't go down well at all. So I was kind of, maybe I was, quite resistant to it. Walking in, but I thought this movie was wonderful. I think it's beautiful. I'll be honest, I didn't really want it to end because I was so immersed in it, and I really felt like I genuinely felt transported to a place. I was transported to Tokyo. I was spending 2.5 hours or however long this movie is with this character of Hirayama, and his daily routine was just, I thought it was amazing. It was so beautiful. Just as a slice of life. I didn't know what to expect, and I was quite moved by it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was surprised by how much I was moved by it as well. I think I've seen other films that I think maybe take this type of an approach. I was reminded of like Ozu films. I was reminded of, we've watched like Jean Dielman together as well. Right. Films that are just kind of like focusing on the acts of everyday life. But there was something about it, and I actually can't even quite put my finger on it yet. There was something about this movie that was so alluring and like affirming to me that it immediately made me want to change the way I was living my life. I mean, I just watched the movie last night, and this morning when I woke up, I just like put my cell phone in the pocket of my jacket and just zipped the pocket closed. And I when I was walking my kids to school and when I walked to work this morning, I was so much more focused on just what was going on around me, and I was like, I'm happier. Like it was amazing how quickly this movie like sunk into my DNA. It was almost like I could see. Maybe it was. I think it was like one of the my favorite parts of the film is, you're with him for the full. Well, you're with him for the full film, but for the first 20 to 30 minutes of the film, you're with him alone. There's not really any other characters that enter the story, right? And so you're just seeing him go through these things, and it feels kind of very normal, or to a degree, it feels very kind of like, okay, I understand this. And then there's that first moment where I can't remember the name of his coworker, like the younger one.
Sure.
There's that first moment where his coworker shows up, and he's late, and he's pulling his suit on, and he's on his cell phone while he's working, and he's distracted. And it would just like hit me like a shot, where I'm like, which of these two guys am I? Like am I the one who's like living this like peaceful, put together life where he like is happy and knows what he's doing, or am I the one who's like looking at his cell phone while he's doing his work and like barely present?
That's so true.
And I think it was like there's so many my favorite part of the film is the ways that these other characters enter the scenes, and he's not judgmental of them. In fact, he's so kind and lovely to all of them. But they just kind of serve to be this, it's not a movie about a man who's a great man or an incredible man, but it's a movie about like someone who, he says that thing where he says like, what's next is next and what's now is now. And like, it's just someone who's very present with himself. And when you're with that type of a person, it doesn't seem spectacular or fascinating until you see how life could be otherwise. And then you realize like, oh, that actually is extremely fascinating and beautiful. Because compared to like some of the other characters, you're like, oh, I definitely would prefer what you're doing to what's happening to some of the other people, in this movie.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Ian. I could not agree more. Zalan, what were your overall thoughts of this?
I mean, it's very relatable, isn't it? Like, I think it's quite an interesting thing that because it's in general, they have this shared human experience of joy and pain, and then the beauty about it is that the character's journey and just acceptance of those emotions, and I mean, he doesn't even, I don't know if there's a timer. I don't think he says a single word in the first hour of the movie. This doesn't have to work with much dialogue, but his emotions, you're with that character. And as you said, other parts, and even just that lady sitting on the bench and all those tiny things, and, like there's a connection with them, like eating at the same time. So it's just so many tiny things in it that I think it just, it takes you away. And also I think that helps that it has a fantastic ending as well, and just a beautiful shot. And then the director is paying homage to his old Japanese roots as well. But I'm glad that you both liked it, because it's in the right place in this great director's this long list of films. I think it's in quite high position.
Yeah. No, I'm struck by it. Go ahead, Chris.
What I was going to say, it really reminded me of, and I'm so glad you're saying this as well. And what you were saying, Zalan, about shared those moments of small interaction and human connection. And when I was in acting school in New York, we had to have a day. It was called Unplugged Day. And you had to, at a certain time in the morning, you check your emails, you check your phone, you do what you need to do on your devices, and then you log off. And you are not allowed to use any electronic device again until like 12 hours later. And you have to leave the house, the flat. You need to go out. And when you go out, you do whatever you can. You travel, you do what you need to do. If anybody interacts with you, you don't say no. Meaning you don't resist whatever comes your way, obviously within reason. And it was and you have to take a notebook with you and a pen, and you need to write down your experiences and how it makes you feel and what you discover. And it was a remarkable day, because to put aside all those distractions that we have in our everyday life, it really does allow you to be what you were saying earlier, Ian. It allows you to be present like Hirayama. And you start to hear things. You start to pick up on conversations that people are having. You start to notice the sights, the sounds, the smells of your immediate environment. There is so much you begin to appreciate. I saw some people outside of like a mobile electronics store selling something. They had a desk set up. They had a sign. So I went and engaged with them, and I got like a free milkshake out of it, or a smoothie or whatever, And, I went to the park, and I sat on a bench, and I heard a couple talking next to me. And I for the life of me now, I can't remember what they were saying, but it was hilarious. And, we're just dropping in on these people's lives momentarily as you move through it. And I think about that woman he sits next to every time on his lunch break, and the look they give each other. But there is something in her eyes, there is something in her face where I'm like, there's a story here, and I want to know what that is. But sometimes we're not allowed to. But that everyone feels so three-dimensional. Everyone feels so there's so much depth here, and it's just it blew my mind. It really, it was staggering in that way.
And really nice, like two things that stuck out to me. One is like, yeah, I think that the writing was really. It's funny to say, writing is, I think, a funny thing to bring up in this script because there is so little that's said, and I think so much of this movie probably was found a lot in the editing and the directing. But I do think when it comes to the writing, the way that certain details about his life are revealed. Chris, you and I have talked a lot about this in the film club we're in too, just about a good script that just doesn't say too much and allows you to slowly piece things together. Mm-hmm. When his niece shows up and suddenly you're like, oh, this guy has some kind of a family connection, and then the conversations about his sister begin, and that really lovely scene with the two, at just a couple moments, like the scene where then he goes and he has to buy a lighter and a pack of cigarettes, which like says so much about something. It's like he doesn't own a lighter anymore, but he clearly smoked in the past. And then that little conversation he has with that man in the park. It's like the scenes where there are these dialogue interactions. They're so, I think, beautifully well put together to kind of give you these little insights into this person's life. And I love too that it makes it so he's not some kind of like Zen, master or something who has always been this way and has no background. Like, it's like, no, this guy probably has only ever been like this for a little bit. That one line when his sister says, like, so are you really cleaning toilets? Mm. And he nods. And there's just, when you see how the car that she's in, and she has a chauffeur, and you're like, oh, there's a whole story here that this guy probably, as a kid, probably no one expected that he would be cleaning toilets as an adult, which I loved. And the other thing I'll say, I'll sneak two in for the price of one, but I think the fact that the music choice in this movie is so lovely.
Loved it.
And what was so cool about it, the fact that there kind of wasn't any other soundtrack really except for the cassette tapes, and just the way that I don't know if it was the way that they were mixed or just the way that they were cut in the film, I felt like I was hearing these songs for the first time, and every one of these songs I've heard 100 times, if not more.
They're well-known songs,
which is the way you feel when you listen to a song on analog, right? When you hear a really nice analog, record of a song, even if you've heard it 100 times, it feels like you're hearing it for the first time. And they captured, even though I was watching the film digitally, it captured that experience. The song came on, and I was like, I never noticed that little guitar line before. I never noticed this. Something about the way that they placed the song so present in the soundtrack and in the editing made me rethink about these, old favorites in like a totally new way, which I think is like exactly the intention of the film.
There's a lot of tiny details, isn't it, that you could admire about it. And I think that what you mentioned about the writing, what goes back to, I think, what the filmmaker chose as well, wanted to be as authentic as possible, because he has a Japanese writer, because I guess he wanted to get all the details, get the character study, get certain elements of Japanese culture that as a foreigner you might have an idea, and then Tokyo is a great city anytime you visit, but there needs to have this local connection and tiny the things that stands out. And I guess with the soundtrack as well, because it's more famous American songs, like it's and then to hear it, them being, I guess, excited about it, and just it just how music travels, and it just that's really an international language in that way as well. And that is fascinating, as you say.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah, that's so true. And my God, when they start playing what's that song? There is a house in New Orleans.
House of the Rising Sun.
House of the Rising Sun. I was jamming in my seat. I'm sure everyone around me didn't appreciate it, but it was amazing.
And then there's that lovely connection where you realize that like there's the woman who owns the restaurant, and she sings that song, and that's like her song, and suddenly it has these layers of like it's. You said, Zalan, you said like details, and it's true. The film is full of so many good details, just little things that are so thoughtful that, get kind of paid off later, or that just, it's like that moment when he opens up the cabinet and you see that there's like hundreds of boxes in there of photographs. It's just such a lovely little shot. It gives you such an insight into who this person is. Well, we could talk about this movie for a long, long time, but I'm very curious to know people's pairings with this film, because I think it's a it's an interesting film. And I'm curious to hear what people would pair with it.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Let's see. I'll go. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Zalan. Yeah.
I mean, I have, because I like the director, sort of American version of it. But in terms of the feeling I got from the film, Jim Jarmusch's Patterson.
I've never seen it. No.
So it's about a bus driver, a simple life bus driver who also a poet, and he's just content with life in a small town, and it's the film is revolving about Adam Driver's playing the lead character. It's beautifully acted, and it's a very simple story. It's about him observing people and writing poetry, and it's in one way you think it's a mundane life. He's just a bus driver, but he's just going through his everyday life. It's basically, I think it's a 1 week of his life, and yeah, it's a great supporting cast, and I'm not sure, I'm not read actually anything about whether Wenders was influenced by it, but I wouldn't be shocked if he said that, oh yeah, I saw Patterson before this film, and then certain elements of it he brought into this project as well. And I'm wondering if you got a chance to see it, I think you might, if you like this Perfect Days, I think you might appreciate all things about Patterson as well.
Ooh,
yeah.
Oh, I
haven't seen it yet, but yeah, it looks lovely.
Yeah, me either. I'm so glad you've chosen that, Zalan. That's great. I've never seen a Jim Jarmusch movie. And actually, in our film club that we have, I was about to choose a couple of Jim Jarmusch movies, and then instead I decided we're going to watch the entire Bond franchise, and I couldn't regret that decision more.
Yeah, we're what, like 12 films in now or something? Yeah,
it's rough. It's rough going.
We're gonna do it though. Well, yeah. What would you pair with this film, Chris?
Okay, so I've got it here. Here we go.
Jeanne Dillman, 23, Quai du Commerce 1080 Bruxelles.
So that is the title of the movie. I didn't want to butcher it, but in short, yeah, it's Jeanne Dillman, which is...
that's funny, I brought it up earlier in the call.
Yeah. And I'm very curious as to what your pairing is going to be, because I was wondering if it would be that. But yeah, Jeanne Dillman. Have you seen the movie, Zalan?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. I mean, that's a great pick.
Yeah, it was. It's
the title either.
Yeah. It's definitely a film that I struggled with while watching, for sure. The Sight and Sound list, top 100 films of all time, named this, the best film of all time. And we watched it in our film club not so long ago. And it is a equal parts fascinating and frustrating viewing. And exactly to what Ian was saying about it earlier, in comparison to Perfect Days, in terms of following someone's routine and their daily rhythms of a life. And yet, Perfect Days adds something to that. There's a real undercurrent and emotion. It's supported by this well of emotion that I just didn't quite get with Jeanne Dillman. And yet, I do think that would make for a very interesting pairing, because there's so much of the same DNA that I think they're all in conversation with each other. So, yeah, if you can get through it, great. I didn't, just to let you know.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we brought up Jeanne Dillman with this one. That's good. I paired it with I was thinking about Tokyo Story, when I was watching it, and everyone should watch Tokyo Story. It's a beautiful film. But I was thinking about the thing that I think really stuck out to me is when I finished this film, I had a type of energy about me, a type of enthusiasm, and kind of like a joie de vivre, I guess you could say, that I with Ozu, I feel this peace when I finish Ozu's films, and with this film, I felt some kind of a desire to go and like experience life in a big way. So I picked a film that kind of gave me that emotion. So the film I'm picking with this is it's a Danish film called Another Round.
Thomas Vinterberg.
By Thomas Vinterberg, which might surprise you as a pairing for this film. But I love this film. I lived in Denmark for a while, and Denmark's very dear to me. And the film basically follows 4 high school teachers who decide to test this theory that if you have like a 0.5 alcohol blood content or something like that, that you're actually just better at everything. And they decide to test this by being a little bit drunk all the time for like 2 months. And it goes horribly wrong, as you could imagine. But there's something really beautiful about the film, I think, particularly in the way the film speaks to an older male experience, maybe someone who's maybe feeling lonely closer to the end of their life and wishing that they had something else, wishing there was something special in life that they're somehow missing. And then I think they find it. I think the beautiful thing about Another Round is it's kind of a story of debauchery a little bit, but I think it's a story of people who ultimately remember what is the grounding fabric of their lives kind of after this experience. And I left Another Round feeling very similar to this one. I left Another Round feeling very optimistic about life, feeling very encouraged, feeling like I needed to reconnect with friends and family, and that like life was worth living, and it's a beautiful film. So and it's funny too. It's very funny. It's a
brilliant
big
film.
comedy.
I love it. Yeah.
Have both of you seen it?
Yeah. It has, in my opinion, has one of the best dance routines in history of film. Like that is such an incredible scene towards the end.
Is this the ending?
But it's great.
Is it the ending you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah.
As you said, it was funny, and but that also there's this sadness about it as well. And then the characters have to go through and kind of recalibrate their life goals and meanings and put themselves in the present, as you say, on just what ifs and stuff. And as you say, like in the quote, you're actually in a nice mix, like, next is next time and now is now. And they embrace that spirit.
It reminds me like very much of like I'm relatively familiar with Danish culture, having lived there for a while and adore it. But this is like this is the Danish version, I think, of what the Japanese Perfect Days is, right? It's like I think this is the way that I think Danes talk about the same thing that Perfect Days is trying to talk about in their own kind of bizarre, dark comedy way. But I think they for some reason remind me very much of each other.
Oh, that's so cool. I mean, you pairing this Perfect Days with Another Round, I maybe at first would have thought, talk me through this, but you've done it so eloquently, and I think that's what a great triple pairing. That's fantastic. I that's the first thing I'm going to do is get to Patterson and Another Round as soon as we finish talking here. That's really
Well, this is we had a German direct a film in Japanese that made us think of an American film, a Belgian film, and a Danish film. So it's what a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right. Well, thank you both. This has been fantastic, and I could, just like in our separate conversation with you, Zalan, I could just keep going, but it's been a real pleasure just to talk to you both and to talk about this really truly special movie that I highly recommend people go and see, because it really, really is beautiful.
And then it's a terrific film, and then I'm glad to say that it really warms my heart when a film like that finds its audience. And it was one of like this year at Phoenix, it was one of the most popular films we had. So he's done really well. We added extra showings for it because there was demand for it, and it's great to see it when a film gets recognized, because it was obviously coming out during the Oscar nominations and stuff, but it was well beyond that as well. There was appetite for people to see it, and that's always terrific, and it's well deserved.
Oh, that warms my heart. I'm so pleased to hear it.
That's lovely.
That's great. Well, again, thank you both. I want to give a special thanks to Zalan, who's with us today. Please come back anytime. You're always welcome. A special thanks to...
Pleasure, guys.
Always. Thanks to the Phoenix Cinema. Our music is by Stefan Krieger. Our episodes are edited by Noah Anderson. And if you want to go watch a movie, head to the Phoenix Cinema. We will meet you there.
Bye-bye.